Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mayor Tompeck,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Here.
Commissioner Fender,
Here.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Okay, we have a couple of presentations this evening. The first one is the audit presentation by CRI. Christine Nolan, please come on down.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Christine Olran. I am the audit partner at Carrigs and Ingram that oversaw your audit. So in front of you, you guys should all have the financial statements, and I'm just going to give you kind of a brief overview comparing this year to last year and some new changes. So if you go to page 5, this is our audit opinion. It does look different from last year because we have new auditing standards this year. So the opinion is now up at the top and it's the first paragraph. You don't have to flip to page 3 to find it anymore. But it is in essence and substance the same audit opinion that you've always received, a clean audit opinion. If you go to page 20, this is basically like your income statement on your fund level. So this is the method that you budget on. And if you look towards the bottom, there is an increase in your fund balance of $1.9 million across all of the funds. So this was one change. Holly created 2 new funds for you this year. So previously you only had a general fund, and at the end of 22, she created capital projects fund and a building fund. So the capital projects fund will keep track of your capital projects in the future, and your building project fund is going to keep track of your building department. So there's a Florida statute that restricts that building permit revenue just to be used for your building department, and so she can track it easier in one separate fund. That's one thing to keep attention to in your budgeting and such, because you're only allowed to carry forward 4 years of the average operating budgeted expenditures. So that fund balance shouldn't grow larger than if you took the last 4 years' budget and did an average of it. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're trying to come up with how much to budget. Your general fund, so this is still where all the activity went through for the year. Your revenue increased overall $163,000. So your property taxes were up $339,000. Your building permits and road improvement fees were up $480,000. That's also what allowed for that large transfer into that fund. And then this was offset by a decline in your intergovernmental by $656,000. So if you look at your grants last year, you had one from TMDL, HGMP, and then you also had some from Martin County for about $1.6 million. Those projects were done or almost done at the end of 21. And then for 22, you had $1 million. Half of that was ARPA. Then you had $330,000 in Indian River Lagoon money, and then also some from DAO and FDEP. So with that decline in your intergovernmental, you also had a $3 million decline in your expenditures. So all of that stormwater project was done, and in addition to the grant money, you also had your matching piece, so the expenditures went down more than the revenues. If you flip back 2 pages to page 18, towards the bottom of your general fund, you'll see your unassigned fund balance. So you have approximately 3 months worth of expenditures if you take out capital outlay in your fund balance. And so the Government Financiers Officer Association recommends having at least 3 months in there. Hurricane hits, FEMA takes several years to actually pay you. So it's good to have those extra reserves on hand. A couple other things that are different this year, about halfway down the page, you'll see unavailable revenue. So this was from your HGMP grant. So last year, some of the requests were filed, and they also asked for additional funds at the same time. So the state didn't approve it because it was all in one package asking for the additional funds. So since the cash didn't come in within 60 days of your year end, you have in the receivables, the due from other governments, and an unavailable revenue line. And then if you look for the On earned revenue, that is your ARPA funds that hadn't yet been spent. So the difference is that cash was received, you just haven't utilized them yet. If you flip way back to page 44, while we're talking about grants, this is where we have a finding for recording revenue and receivables. So there was some receivables and some revenue not recorded, and it was primarily from that HGMP grant. So you had a lot of turnover in your staff this year, so your finance, your town manager all knew there was no cash that came in from this grant. So Holly and Mariah didn't even know it was out there to know to record a receivable or a deferred inflow. We knew from last year that it wasn't quite finished from doing the audit. So then they got with the project manager, figured out the status, and then that extra, even though it's not revenue, since you spent the money, that grant was also what then pushed you over with the ARPA funds to need that extra examination too. So this is the second year it is a finding for the cutoff of the grants. We did talk a lot with Mariah and Holly of trying to gather a list so that they have everything, go through the minutes, make sure they're not missing anything. So at year end, they can know what needs to get added on. Because you don't want it for year 3, because then the state sends you a lovely letter of, how are you going to fix this? And nobody wants that. If you go to page 47, you will see last year we had 4 findings. All 3 of the other findings were cleared. So that was excellent, especially with all the staff turnover. And then on page 48, we did have 1 improvement point. And this was mainly, again, due to the turnover. So Holly told us outright kind of at the beginning when she first came on, there really wasn't anyone to review her journal entries, so they weren't being reviewed. So in that time frame where it was her and Mariah wasn't on board yet, she was preparing them and there wasn't review of those journal entries. Does anyone have any specific questions on anything else in the financial statements? Or I'm gonna, nope, okay. The other,
Commissioner Campbell?
oh,
Yes?
Thank you very much, Christine. It's great to see you again. I want to make sure everyone knows that auditing can be fun, which is on page 5. It says that you are monitoring our fun activities. So thanks for having a little fun with us. I think I'm a little bit concerned with 2 strikes with the grant receivables issue. Tell us a little bit about what we need to do to prevent the 3rd strike and what would happen if we did get a bad letter from the state.
so the good part is this is a year-end cutoff issue. It's not something that's happening all throughout the year. So it's not, oh no, we're 3/4 of the year done. This is something you're just looking at year-end to get the proper cutoff. So Holly and Mariah need to kind of get with all your departments and your consultants and make sure there's no grants out there that someone submitted something or they spent money and they didn't submit a reimbursement request for, and then all of a sudden it's coming later. So they're working on trying to just compile a list so that they have, just for completeness of, do I know everything that's out there so I can make sure I've adjusted for all these? Because it wasn't like they just did it wrong, they just didn't even know it was existed, yeah.
Right. So if the state gave us the letter, what would be the consequences of something like that?
They ask you for your plan of what you're going to do to fix it. So usually you just respond to, this is our plan, this is the steps that we've taken, and then you send it back to the JLAC committee, and unless they really don't agree with it, then they just hopefully see it, go away the next year.
So no jail time for commissioners?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, you work with other municipalities, right, Christine? So what are your other municipalities doing now that interest rates have gone up and money markets are getting 4% and old school sweep accounts are getting 0.15 and they repossess your calendar because the fees are so high? Tell us about what other municipalities are doing with the state treasurer's investment pool and how they're blending that.
I've seen a lot more move their money into the SBA plan. It's the state's plan for investment pools.
Right, and SBA isn't Small Business Association, it just happens to be the same initials, right? Okay.
Yes. And then, and I've also seen them move into like FMIT, because they also have investment pools and having less sitting in cash. A lot of those pools are used because you aren't required, since the state runs them, to then do 8 hours of investment training on top of that. You can invest in more, but then a town employee would have to sit through an 8-hour course to be just on investments, so that you're complying with statute of they're knowledgeable enough to make those decisions.
Right. So the SBA through the state, which is known as Florida Prime, has got a AAA rating, which is basically the same thing as FDIC,
Yeah.
as far as the level, and we don't have the $250,000 limitation. Right,
Correct.
okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, first of all, I want to say good to see you again, and thank you. It looks like you did a great job. I read through it all, and I think the staff did a great job, too, because there's an improvement this year, correct less findings, and we received the unqualified opinion, which is
Yeah.
what the main goal is. So, excellent work, and I had pressed my button because there was one issue, but it looks like it was fixed in the
We added the one-
copy on our desk. So the ones that in our agendas was missing on page 29, for my fellow commissioners, if you noticed that. The ones in our agenda just ended at the tax rate was 2.87, and this one has the and .4 mils for capital purposes. So that was it. Excellent work. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Campo?
Unless there are any other questions, I'll move approval of the audit.
I'll second.
I had just one or two
Okay,
very
sorry,
quick
sorry.
questions. I was looking at the summary of audit adjustments on page 10,
Communications, yep.
and I was wondering, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 journal adjustments. Is that an unusual number?
No, they're primarily from the revenue cutoffs. So in trying to, from that grant, and then also the intergovernmental, when Holly was in here trying to book it, there was a few entries in and out, and to, I guess, reverse them, instead of just making one net entries to follow, we would do reversing back of, let's clear it, let's move it back the same way, so it's easier to follow. So these all relate to that revenue and receivables finding. There was just multiple ins and outs.
Okay, so it's really more administrative than substantive?
yeah.
Okay. And I guess on page 13 at the very top, on item 7, it just says adjustments to disclosure have been made for all events, including instances of noncompliance. And I assume there's no other noncompliances than the ones we've talked about.
No, correct.
Okay. Thanks. It's for an engineer, this is difficult to read, but we did our best.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments? If not, we have a motion and a second on the floor, so please call the roll.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to the second presentation, which is...
Thanks, Christine.
Yeah, and just one more thing, so this lovely little 2-page report for the examination for your grants, that will get filed with the Federal Audit Clearinghouse by Friday. So that's it's like a mini single audit just on those grant funds.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again.
Okay, the next item is a presentation on the proposed 5-year capital improvement plan, public hearing. So Town Manager, go ahead and make your presentation, please.
Thank you. Just 1 minute, I'll get back up on the screen. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a process we go through every year. We're responsible for putting together a 5-year plan, so it's kind of a rolling period. So we hone in on a lot of the expenses that we estimate the first year, and it's kind of pretty much fine-tuned till you go out to the bidding process, as we found out. And then as it goes out in years, there are more estimates than exact numbers. So we just try to look at to see what expenses we're going to have in the future and try to make a decision on the grants and how they match up. And so that's kind of the process that every municipality goes through. The major projects that we have in front of us are the projects that involve our stormwater resiliency. The first one that's on there, which is kicked out to 27, and I don't know why they're in this particular order. It's not any priority. Obviously, Phase 3 is our priority right now, but the top one is the Sewalls Point Road, Phase 1, Part 4, which is also known as South River Road. In fact, most of our paperwork now in the future is going to say South River Road since Phase 1 is pretty much completed. The next one, which is slated to start within the fiscal year 24, is South Sewalls Point Road Phase 2. As you know, we went from Phase 1 to Phase 3, and we hope to get back to Phase 2 this next calendar year. So we can, we're estimating April or May time period, so we can, again, solve the problems that we have with the sea level rise and the stormwater flooding that occurs. Again, we're looking for that project to take multiple budget years. So that's why you see the differences, different amounts that are plugged in. And then Phase 3 is the amount that's proposed to complete the Phase 3 project. And just to give you all an update, we're looking at rebidding that project. We've have bids out now. We separated out the undergrounding work for the water line and the sewer line, and those bids are due in July 17th. And I'll be able to report back to you all on our meeting on July 18th. And then the balance of the project is going to be the stormwater and raising the roadway to meet the 3-foot elevation to match the Phase 1 project. And then Phase 4 is the area that's in front of Town Hall and runs down to Ridgeview. Again, that's not as serious as the other locations, but to finish off South Sewalls Point Road, and we're estimating that to be in fiscal year 26. And then North Sewalls Point Road is one that we've had some grant money for design, but so far we've been unable to get the county on board since that North Sewalls Point Road is a county road. We don't control it. And we have had several meetings with the county administrator, and so far it has not shown up on their capital improvement plan. So we continue to try to, get the county to group with us. So those expenditures, really are going to entail going out most of the 5 years of this 5-year plan. The Stormwater Master Plan is something that we need to get kicked into high gear as well, mostly because the federal government, any of the federal grants now are going to be requiring us to have the Stormwater Master Plan, and Joe's aware of that. Then we have the South Sewalls Point Septic to Sewer. As you know, we had the $8.4 million grant, and that's basically how we estimate spending the grant dollars. We've gotten the contract in with DEP, and again, we're looking at moving forward with the first 150 somewhat connections, 148, 150 exactly. Where we're at with that part is up to the county for that first part. And then we figure that the next phase to finish out to 370, just shy of 400, is going to be in the next, probably the end of fiscal year 24 and into fiscal year 25. Just for the public's knowledge, our fiscal years don't run on calendar years, so we actually start October 1 and go through September 30th, not to add confusion for you. We do have some remodeling work that needs to be done at the police department, and through a generous donation or grant from a individual, we're able to fund the majority of that project, and we've estimated it's going to take us about $75,000 to complete. A lot of the items need to be redone over in the police department, and we're looking to try to carve more room out of the footprint that they currently exist in. And then the Town Hall Resiliency Project, again, that's pushed out to year 4 and 5 out of this plan. And ultimately, we're looking at developing a plan for resiliency for this building. We found out with Hurricane Nicole, which was a minimal hurricane, but, we could have had an issue with flooding, and we didn't, thank God. But as the sea level rises and we have, the possibility of getting on the stronger storms, we need to take a look at that. So right now, it's just under study, and again, we look for grant dollars for that type of work. So, but it's as part of our plan that we had last year, we just put kind of more realistic numbers that we might need for that plan. And then we just looked at our capital maintenance with capital projects. We always have maintenance. We have our general engineering costs that, deal with anything from, projects that are out there to repairing stormwater systems, roadways, and so forth. And we are looking at funding some of our roadway conditions that we have out there to make sure that we can patch and repair and do everything to keep our roads safe. And then streetlights and signs, all of our capital maintenance, streets, bridges, seawalls, and then our stormwater maintenance. As we progress through adding stormwater systems, our maintenance costs are going to increase between vacuuming the lines and the outfalls and replacing older pipes and so forth. So we're trying to look at funding the capital maintenance. And then our parks and landscaping pretty much speaks for itself, us being a tree city. We take that very near and dear to our heart. And then just maintenance items with Town Hall itself. Again, as we progress in that resiliency of Town Hall, we don't want to go out and spend a lot of money if we are going to be serious in year 4 and 5 and doing something. But we have situations like we had tonight. The air conditioning kicked off, right? It's now starting to cool off a little bit, but it was kind of warm in here at 5 o'clock. So we're going to run into those things that are maintenance items that we have to account for, because this is one of our capital assets. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think we laid out the plans. This is meant to just be a presentation for this. We will actually take the comments that you all have and fine-tune this document, and it'll be on the agenda for our July 18th meeting to adopt as part of our budget process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daniels. Do we have any comments from the public? Anyone from the public like to comment? Okay, I got a couple of questions. I'm looking at the Phase 3, $13,230,000 in fiscal year -- My recollection is that that's about a 500-day construction. So since I don't think it's going to be starting in the very near future, I'm sure we won't be spending all that money in FY24. I'm sure some of it will spill over to FY25. So you might want to adjust that number.
Okay, will do. We also, just on the approximation of days, and of course, we don't know until we get the new bids in, but by us separating out the underground work, that's a project and could move forward that normally would have added 3 or 4 months to the schedule from having the contractor do the whole thing. So hopefully, we're going to have some savings there, but how much, I can't come back and tell you. It all depends on
understand
the
that.
winning bid, so.
The other thing is, at the last meeting, we were talking about methods of how we want to maybe fund the stormwater system maintenance. And you put in some numbers here, and I'd like to, I think the commission would like to see some of the backup. And we recognize, because we're making changes to our stormwater system, there's obviously going to be additional outfalls, there's going to be additional maintenance and all the other things. But I'd like to get an idea of how you came up with the $300,000 starting in FY '25.
Okay.
Okay? Any other comments from the commission? Commissioner?
I know about the commission, but
Comment card.
wait.
Please come on up. We already called for public comments, but go ahead.
I just wonder, I'm sure it's not included in that number, but streetlights, is there ever any discussion of putting any more streetlights on River Road? They're very few. I walk there in the dark a lot with my dog, so that's why I ask. Never thought of it.
Not aware of it. I don't know if anybody else in the commission is.
Okay. Well, I knew if I brought it up, I'd probably hear that answer, but maybe I'll just keep bringing it up. Okay, thank you.
I wrote it down.
Thank you.
Did you, did I interrupt you?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I think it's good for this process. I think it's good for the public to understand our recurring income from ad valorem tax is less than 2.6 million. And capital improvement projects are big numbers. But I just thought, I mean, we're going to get some of the communication pieces out on this. We had talked about this generally, the pie chart, affectionately known as. The ad valorem recurring income is 2.6 million. Out of that, 1.7 million is police and fire. As a municipality, we've got to have a clerk, we've got to have a manager, we have to have a building official, we have to have a finance director, we have to have someone change the light bulbs, Jeff. That comes out to about 2.4. So how do you come up with a capital improvement project budget of 23 or 12 or 21 million dollars? To me, our business model has been making Joe Capra work really hard. No, our business model has been to get maximum grants for capital improvements. But when you look at the number, I think it's important for everybody to realize how much money it takes just to cover those basic duties. The expense for fire rescue is outsourced to the city of Stewart. We've gone through bidding in the past, and our current fee is about $550,000 a year. It's about to go and jump to, I think, $700,000. And I think that's a good schedule that we need to get out and let people know. Because when you take, now we have other revenues, there's no question about it. But when you just think 2.6 million of ad valorem, and you have 1.7 and basically another 500,000, that's just to make the trains, run on time. How do you come up with millions and millions of dollars of capital improvement? And so we've been very creative with getting grants. We've stuffed some money aside. That was let's call it a surcharge. We set it aside. The ad valorem tax has been 2.87 for 8 or 9 years. There was 1 year where it bumped up by 0.4 mils, and that's been in a dedicated fund for capital improvement projects. But I just think it's good going into that to dwarf the 10 to 20 million dollars. I mean, everyone wants to be able to press 911 and have someone show up if there's an emergency. I mean, it's not an extravagance. Everyone wants to be able to come to and forth to their property without getting their car turned into chitty chitty bang bang and turn it into a boat just to get home. But it's a challenge for us, and I think that we've got a good game plan. When I look at fiscal year '24, it's kind of a wish list. but it's a good place to start. It's non-binding. It's well thought out with different professionals and the commission over the years, but it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge to come up with all this. The one question that I would have, South Sewalls Point septic to sewer, the initial project was, in my simple terms, was the force main from A1A to Pineapple with a lateral line looping around Rio Vista, which was about 1.2 million. So how are we coming up with 3 million in fiscal year '24? And then when we go back later on to, I'm going to poach from Jack's building reports, which shows building activity, we're actually, or no, hang on a second, no, it's from your, the capital improvement project request form. Let's just look at that. First of all, thank you for those. I think I've asked for those, and I'm really appreciative for the one-pager that's backing up the capital improvement project. One page that describes not just, phases and stages, but street names, so thank you for that. But when I look at page of the packet, let me see. Page 79 of the packet. So the first question is, how do we get from 1.2 million, which, hopefully we're getting it down, that's what we were told last time. How are we going from 1.2 million to 3 million? And number two, when you look at page 79, which is the septic to sewer project, and you look at funding sources, town match, customer hookups, does that make sense? When I do the math, that's 500 hookups, and we're kind of maxed out at 300. So I'm just wondering, that's an item of close scrutiny. So if the numbers don't match up with what's been told before, we want to look closely at that because we want to continue to earn the public's trust. When the 1.2 turns into 3 and the hookups, when you do the math, ends up being 500, something.
Can I answer that for you?
Sure.
Okay, we're talking about the fiscal year of '24. So we've already, we're planning on starting that project in October, the first part of the fiscal year, and the project will run 3 months. So we still have, out of the fiscal year, we'll still have another 9 months. So we hope, as we move and progress along, that we're going to be able to move into the next part of septic to sewer, and that would probably be to High Point, and filling in the amount of hookups that the county allows us to do at that point.
Perfect, great.
And then they've asked us to let them know where we are, and I think a lot of that is going to be the connections. They want to make sure that, those people that can connect or want to connect will be able to connect. And so that's really one of the numbers that they're going to be looking at in the future and where we are. And again, are we going to do what we say we're going to do? And I think, we've proven that now with commercial septic to sewer, and that project has been moving along. In 2 weeks. They've gotten the line run, and they're getting ready to start doing some of the electrical at the end of this week. So I think what, we're going to see, hopefully, is that project, since it's fully funded, that we can go ahead and move forward with it. Again, it's taking a bullseye shot. A lot could happen between now and then. It could be a hurricane or something that changes our plans. But, we have to plan something out of the 5-year, but that's why the number is higher than the 1.2. And in reality, I hope by rebidding the underground work that we're going to be doing from Pineapple to Ocean is hopefully we're going to be less than that 1.2.
Right.
So
that helps me with the actual capital improvement plan, why the 3 is there, 3 million rather than, on page 87, when it says funding sources, and it's $1.2 million times 5 years, the number that we've been banding about with, based upon the county's program, is $12,000 per connection. So when you do the math, it's 500 hookups. Now, that might not be that significant. This is just kind of spitballing, but
Yes.
if right now, we're still looking at a maximum of like 330? Is that
The maximum
for South Sewalls Point?
no, it's 706.
No, the maximum that the county has been allowing us to use the current system of the grinders.
I believe it's like 357 right now.
Right.
Let me explain something to you. There is a standard that they went by, and originally, I think we were at 337 or something like that. But as they look at our design work and they see where it could be to their benefit, that they have more grinder systems because of the different areas that we have to service, or we see that, this block could be serviced better by having the grinders. They've been open to that. By them, it's the Martin County Utilities and what we're trying to do. Ultimately, it's going to be the interlocal agreement that's going to specify exactly how many that we can put in of which type. So we always have as a backup the gravity system, which if they will not give us permission, and that's why we're trying to be frugal with the money up front. So, because we know it's going to be a little bit more expensive for us to do the gravity work than the grinder system, but we want to, I want to be conservative, and whatever dollars we can save now is going to help us at the end if that's the case.
Okay, so the page 79, where it's 5 years, which might total 500 hookups, we're going out 5 years, so that's just kind of a real, the bullseye is far off.
Correct.
Can you just refresh my memory on when the fire with the city of Stewart goes up? And Mariah's not here?
No, she's in a conference.
Oh, okay.
I think it's 26. I think I looked at it the other day.
It's in the audit thing. It's in the audit report.
I thought it was 25.
I think it was.
I could be wrong.
So the budget that we're going to be working on, next month is fiscal year '24. I think
Correct.
it's fiscal year '25, but hopefully not.
It's either 25 or 26. I saw it when I was looking through this, but I don't remember.
Page 36, and it says it goes up to 763,025, fiscal year 25.
763 in,
Fis-
so that's next year. Okay. It's currently,
No, it's the following one.
The next
year
fiscal year.
ended
Right.
2025.
oh, so it's 26 then,
Oh, okay.
right, Kaya?
No, it says for the year ended, yes, okay, you're talking about the
So it'll start
beforehand. Okay,
October of
okay, yeah,
25, or-
yeah.
Yeah, 25
Yes,
to get
yes.
into 26.
So we have the current rate of $550,000 for this fiscal year that we're about to adopt the budget, and one more year.
That's correct.
And then it's going to go from 550 to 763,000. That's, and at the same time, not to throw shade at the county, but they're about to give their firefighters a 17% raise. So we're going to get crunched. We're going to get crunched. But again, who wants someone to arrive when they call 911? I do. That's a 40% increase that we've got coming up. So,
And starting last year, they started, well, actually for this fiscal year, but when Dan worked on the budget last year, if you recall, we started putting money away for that increase. So
Right.
it's not going to be as big of a shocker. So we've been plugging dollars away for the Christmas fund, so to speak. And, and hopefully, it'll minimize the impact that we have by planning ahead.
thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, first of all, I have a question, Town Manager, on fiscal year 24, on page 75 on the capital improvement plan. The cost for Phase 3, that doesn't include any of the cost for the septic to sewer, correct? Because that is covered by the grant that is down,
That's correct.
okay. All right, I just wanted to reiterate that. I think Commissioner Campo, you made good points about the perspective of our revenue versus our projects, and that's something I relate to people when we talk about it. It's just hard to see it if you're not thinking about it, just how big and expansive this project is. It's huge, it's so expensive, but I really believe it's a priority for this town for our long-term viability, our safety, and our economic value. I mean, I feel like this is imperative for our town to do if we want to stay a viable town. If we were
part of unincorporated Martin County, I think this project would be getting done. So this is our responsibility, and I really believe it's important. So that's why we're undertaking such a massive venture here. And also, Mayor, I think you made a good point about the expenditures of Phase 3. That's ambitious.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we can
No.
spend $13 million in 1 year, but,
Based on the rate we move at, that seems a
I
little bit
made
much.
that note, so.
well,
Okay.
I think the other thing that we, consider is that this is a very fluid situation, depending upon what the new bids show and a whole bunch of other factors. And, hey, there's been cases in the past where we didn't have grant money available, or we didn't have a source of funds available, where we had to, stop a project and then wait to get the funds. And the same thing will probably happen, as much as I don't want it, with Phase 3, just because of the sheer magnitude of the cost. So I think, put that in perspective, it's not going to be a case where we're just going to continue to plow through and borrow money and all this other, we're just not going to do that. That's not what this commission has done in the past, and we won't be doing in the future, I'm sure.
Mayor, can I add, I forgot one thing, can I add it?
Sure.
Town manager, if you, for the next version, if you could put it in a priority order of sorts, that would be good.
Okay.
Because that first one, the Part 4, in my opinion, is not a priority at this point. And North Sewalls Point Road, while it does have its problems, just kind of put them in the order at which we need to address them. Please, if that's
Well
okay with
taken.
everyone else. Okay.
If I may, and I just lost my train of thought. I wanted to dovetail off what you were saying, Mayor, but,
I distracted you, sorry.
well, the priority order, I know, but I'll think of it, and we can discuss it on the 18th at our next meeting, so.
Okay, so the action item here is that you'll go ahead and prepare a resolution to adopt the plan for the next meeting?
That's correct, with the changes that you all have mentioned, and if there's something else that you see, because I know you just got this last week, and, this along with the budget process that we're going to be going through, I know what it was. July is the month that we expect a lot of the grants to start being hitting the portals. In fact, I talked to Chloe today. There is another one grant that we're looking at for July 1st. It opens up. So, hopefully, the 18th, and as we get into the budget meetings in September, we might be able to give us better news. If you recall, I think it was September when we applied for the grants that got us the $8.4 million for the septic to sewer and the $2.9 million for Phase 2. So, those are things that, they come up, but, they're kind of scheduled. So, and Chloe thinks pretty certain that July should be a good month for those opportunities to avail themselves.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, I forgot something, sorry, thank you. On page 79, Town Manager, the Point Commissioner Campo was talking about the Town Match customer hookups. It seems like each year on the other spreadsheets, that's a new funding source, but I don't think it is going to be a funding source for those 5 years. I mean, once it's done, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because that would be many, many, many houses, right?
Yeah, but once it's hooked up, you're done.
Right.
Right.
I guess I thought each column is, do
Well,
you
the
see what I'm saying?
hookups themselves, because it's not a mandatory hookup unless the state legislature changed something.
Right.
As we know, they have the power to do a lot of things, and so I always add that caveat now after going through this last legislative session that, yes, right now the law is that, the Martin County Utilities has that right to waive our community from having to connect to the sewer system, so.
Right, I was just talking more like a logistics on a spreadsheet, and maybe I'm just
Right.
not understanding the spreadsheet correctly. It makes it look like there's going to be 500 houses each year, if Commissioner Campo's math is correct.
500 was the total
Over it.
all years.
Oh, okay. Oh, got it, all right. I need to work on my math that I didn't do in my head.
So does this require a motion?
No.
I don't believe so. The next item is public comment, and we have, I have 3 sheets. First one is Nicholas Fierro.
is Nicholas Fierro.
Excuse me,
Council,
you need to address the
my name is Nicholas Fierro. First off, I'd like to thank you all for what you had to say. It was very important. Tertiarily, the audit, just a couple of lines, and they all matched out perfectly. Not a lot of information behind that. But getting into the good stuff, I would like to know why. I would like to know if the fire budget is part of the safety budget, like the police and safety and everything, if that increasing Martin County fire budget is part of that. And then I would also like to know why it increases every year. Do we have more people? Are there more fires? The engineering on the town, I want to know why there's $75,000 every year for maintenance, plus each year. This year, they want $250,000 for design on this project, $500,000 on this project, another $300,000 on this project. All these phases, why are they not planned together? When you build a house, it's not, let me plan the foundation, let me pour the foundation. Oh, wait, you got to do plumbing. Let me tear the foundation out, put the plumbing in, and now let's plan this next bit, and now let's plan this next bit. You design the whole thing from the top down. This is outrageous. And then you have CapTep doing this work. Why aren't we having another bids? They get $25,000 to put bids out, but we're not bidding other contractors to see if they have better prices, or if they can manage this more efficiently than tear the foundation up every time we got to add something new. I'd like to let you know I'm an engineer and I was in the Navy. I know the deal. If we don't use the whole budget this year, we don't get an increase next year. But this is my home and not my ship, and I really don't like seeing it happen like this. This is the second time. I thought we had problems with the last town manager trying to put more money in or take more money from everybody. We want loans, we want grants. Grants you think are free money, but they're not free money. They come with extra stipulations. Even the compliance costs of that future stipulations cost us taxpayers more money in the future, but that's not accounted for. That's not amortized forward. The only numbers that go up are our capital assets, which I don't know if we pay any debt on the new police cars, or if we take that out of the $2 million we get in taxes, then we got $1.5 million we want to cover up with grants, and then we want to take out loans. I thought we all moved here to be left alone in a nice place, not to be crushed under the boot of progress like the county. That's why we got away from this stuff, not to be the county. 3 minutes is a long time. Wow, I don't even know if I need the rest of it. That was pretty good. I see the rest of my time. Thank you very much.
H.B. Barrett.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say, it's easier to spend someone else's money, but it's even easier to take out debt.
Good afternoon, everybody. H.B. Barrett, 23 East High Point Road. We've been hearing a lot about numbers tonight, and I'm going to give you a little bit breather. Rather than talk about numbers, I'm going to talk about the written word. You each have a copy of the town ordinance. No, there's no light.
Just tap it and see if it makes that noise. No, the mouthpiece. Mouthpiece.
Ooh, all right. Thank you, James. Anyway, you each have a copy of the town ordinance, which concerns floor elevation and building height limits. I'm asking you to direct staff to update that ordinance. And my basis for asking that request is I challenge each of you to go through and read the ordinance and be able to comprehend it without having questions. This ordinance was brought to my attention during our last BZA meeting because this was at the crux of the application. A couple of days or a week after we finished with that application and approved it, I ran into the lawyer that represented the applicant, and during the meeting I had used the term convoluted with reference to the way this thing was written, and I asked the lawyer that represented the applicant if my term was appropriate, and the response was, it's very confusing. We had to go back to the town 4 times for clarification. So I'm asking you to update it. You also see where I highlighted in orange one particular section of it, 2A and B. This refers to the lowest living elevation area. And if you look at it closely, you'll see that you can only build, or the lowest living area has to be within 18 inches of the height of the crown of the road. If the average grade is lower than the crown of the road, or 18 inches from the grade if it's higher than the crown of the road. So it doesn't give anybody the ability to build their structure up to prevent flooding. And with sea level rise, I think that portion needs to be changed as well too. It makes me understand why when I moved here 7 years ago, I didn't see any elevated homes. I was used to those everywhere in the Keys. In fact, they require it. And this basically prohibits anybody from elevating their living area of their home. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
AP.
Don Weiner.
Thank you for all for giving me the time to spout. I got to read my notes. My age is tough to remember. First and foremost duty of a commission is to provide for the welfare of the town, demonstrating fiscal responsibility while doing so. You are currently working on 2 multi-million-dollar huge capital improvement projects. Whether or not to proceed at the present time is simple. First, the town doesn't have the money. Current costs for these projects is far exceeding initial planning. Inflation has hit all of us in one form or another. Many of our town residents are living on pensions, Social Security, and limited investments. To incur debt or raise revenue through one form of taxation or another to fund these projects at the present time is not in keeping with your responsibility to our residents. That said, there are fiscally sound reasons to postpone these projects. As you know, we are in a period of strong inflation. This is one reason for the high cost of the projects. The current price of oil, due to Saudi's production cut, government regulations, and millions of barrels the government will be purchasing to replenish our country's oil reserves, has significantly increased the cost of oil and therefore asphalt. The feds will be raising interest rates sometime between now and the end of the year. This will increase the likelihood of a recession and possibly a double recession sometime in the early part of next year. The recession, along with the cuts in oil prices, should lower the cost of these projects once that happens, at which time they can be revisited. These 2 projects can wait a year or 2, maybe even 3, when costs are lower, giving you time to fulfill your responsibilities to maintain our roads in a manner fitting with the town of our caliber. You've all received photos I've sent, and I'd like to thank those of you who took their time to reply in support. Our roads need help. In simple terms, a family doesn't buy a luxury car until the family has been fed. You guys need to feed the family. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Great to see you, buddy.
Okay, are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? Motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck.
Yes. Next is the consent agenda. Are there any questions?
I have,
Commissioner Campbell?
could I just pull the building report just to point something out from the consent agenda?
Sure.
But I'll move approval of the consent agenda with the building report
I'll second.
excluded at this point.
Please call the roll.
Now I gotta find it.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yes. So then I'll talk to, you
Please
might
go
want
ahead
to
with
talk
the,
to Jack about it, or the town manager. So page 96, I love the graphic. We haven't had a new home building permit pulled. We've had one new home building permit pulled in the past 6 months. One. And I wanted to ask, if the prior 3 months, so October, November, and December, we had 5. The Federal Reserve has been increasing interest rates, just have increased mortgage rates. So as we move forward, I wanted to ask the building official about pipeline, because I know when people build large homes, they normally come visit with you well in advance. So there's no building permits pulled for new homes in May. Do you know if anyone were pulled in June? And do you have any indication of new home building permits or plans that people are bringing to you and saying, you know, we're going to come out of the ground at the end of the year, or have you seen that thing totally dry up?
I have not seen a slowdown, even though the numbers look like they're slowed. It's just a matter of the timing.
I know you're working hard. Please don't take
it's not that I have a bunch of them
I
on
know
my
that.
shelf right now that I haven't gotten to those yet, but they do come in and they have met with me. We've got a couple that are scheduling demolition real soon. A couple of them have been in to meet with me. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow on one on site. They're trying to map the structure out without destroying trees and seeing what I would approve. So that one for sure is going forward, but it's just a matter of time. And these plans, they're, like I said, they're large plans. They take quite some time for the architect to draw them up. So,
I mean,
but
that's
no
a great-
slowdown. I don't see any
It's a great
slowdown.
indicator. And you've already hit your number essentially for the full fiscal year, so I know that you're working hard. I was just trying to get canary in a coal mine type of indicators.
Yes,
We're
and
doing budgeting and that type of thing, so thank
I
you very
have
much.
not seen a slowdown. Yeah, you're welcome.
So with that, I'd move the building report at this time.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us down to item 9, resolutions. Resolution number 960, State Revolving Fund Loan. Town Clerk, please read the resolution title into the record.
A resolution of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, authorizing the town to borrow funds from the State Revolving Fund Loan Program in an amount not to exceed $3 million for the purposes of funding capital improvement projects, making findings, authorizing the loan application, authorizing the loan agreement, establishing pledged revenues, designating authorized representatives, providing assurances, providing for conflicts, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you. Mr. Daniels?
Yes, if you recall at our last meeting, I kind of explained one of our backups to a backup plan. And, you know, if we did run into a crisis where we needed to borrow money from the state revolving fund, there's certain requirements that they have to pre-approve. That's what this resolution covers. Doesn't necessarily mean that tomorrow we're going out and borrowing $3 million, but if we get a year and a half down the road and we, like I said, we had some tragedy that occurred with a hurricane or whatever the case may be, and our, you know, our exposure to grants and contracts that we have out there on the roadway work, you know, we could come back in and, you know, obviously I'd come back to this commission and you all would approve or disapprove borrowing money from the state revolving fund. It's a 1% to 2% interest rate that they charge, and it just all depends where the market is at the time that the request is made. So what happens is we gave them a packet of all of our capital projects, and this will be part of that along with our minutes from the public hearing that we had earlier tonight. So, and then they meet in August and they decide, okay, we're going to set aside some money for Sewalls Point out of what we have, just in case they need it. And then it's a case of completing an application if we decide that we need it, or you decide, we is not me, we is you all, that, we need it and, we can justify it, and then we fill out the application and make the request. So this is all part of that whole file, and starting tomorrow, we'll be sending all the documentation up to them.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. If anybody has any input from the public, we'd like to hear from you. Okay, if not, we'll go to the commissioners. Commissioner Campo.
Yeah, I'm generally in favor of the next two items on the agenda, including this one. There's a, big pipeline that we're about to embark upon, and I've had several comments, emails, Frank Titicus, Joe Joyce, Nick tonight, regarding Joe Capra's status, and I think just for everyone's confidence, since his contract is coming up for renewal in August, I think it would be wise for us to, as the provision allows, to search for other bidders to make sure that we've got everything that we've got in place, the boat's ready to leave the dock, and if there's any other possibilities, that this is the time to explore those, because once the boat leaves the dock, we're not coming back. I think Joe's got a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge and experience. There's also, some reservations, and I want to make sure that those reservations are cleared at this time by making a good survey of who and what are available into the community, because then it's full steam ahead. And it's I think a 3-year contract. It just so happens that we have this opportunity now, and to just, ignore our responsibility as a commission to take a closer look at that would, I think, be somewhat derelict in duty, and I'm not willing to take all that on my shoulders. I'd rather, take a good look at, see who and what is available out there. It's provided for within the provision, but the commission needs to say something about that. So especially if I'd like to have that conversation, because I'd like to hear the input from the other commissioners in regards to that before the debt thing is big. We're not having a vote, to the community. There's big numbers involved, bigger than, we've ever even imagined. And I think it would be wise to make sure that everyone's got the full survey of professionals that are available out in the community. So I wanted to see from the other commissioners how you are feeling about the opportunity. I've talked to Glenn briefly about it, of, I would like to direct staff to put together an RFQ so that we can see what other engineer firms might be able to help us. And so that would be kind of the direction I'm going, but I want to see from the other commissioners what your feelings are before we take the vote to take on the debt.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I think, I don't think we should really jam this resolution 960 with the item on CapTech, and I think that's what you're doing here. I think we do want to discuss what you're talking about, but I'd rather wait until we got to 11B. Okay, so let's finish with resolution 960, then we can get back to that when we get to 11B. We can do the whole discussion. That's really where it comes up. So do we have any other comments on the resolution itself? I'm sorry, Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I agree they're separate. This project and borrowing money or not borrowing money is not contingent on who is actually being the engineer. This is about the project. And my question for the resolution is, and I talked to the town manager before, and we confirmed this, but I just want to make it clear to everyone because this is important for me. There's a difference between actually borrowing the money and doing all the prep work to be able to borrow the money.
Correct.
And right now, this is just to do the prep work to borrow the money if we needed to, which I think sounds smart so that you can be prepared. The mayor mentioned earlier about what if there's something that comes up and you have to stop construction. That cost the town a decent amount of money, and that's just really, in my opinion, wasted money. $150,000 or something that we had to pay. So this seems smart to maybe have that in the toolbox to cover potential issues like that, as opposed to the commissioner saying, yes, we're going to borrow all the money to do all these projects. This is just, I think, a smart move to make when taking on such a huge undertaking, and I think it's very judicious use of the town's resources, including its money. So I would make a motion to approve resolution number 960.
Okay, before we do that, Vice Mayor Kurzman
Oh,
has a
sorry about
comment.
that.
I definitely consider this more in the way of, I would look at this as an insurance policy. If something happens, as we said before, with any type of major hurricane, and the town has borrowed money in the past, back with Gene and Francis, the town had to borrow well over $1 million because they didn't have it. And they weren't prepared. And our former mayor, who was at the microphone earlier, he's the one that made me aware of that. And it's something that's important that we do have this in our back pocket should we get hit. And I'd hate to go through the whole application process while our streets are torn up, our building could be torn down. You don't know what's going to happen. This is, to me, it's a no-brainer, and I think it's something that we should do to protect everybody that lives here. And I'm for moving forward on this myself.
Okay, and I
Sounds
think-
like a second.
And I think, yeah, and that this is, Mr. Daniels did exactly what we asked you to do, which was to prepare the documentation, have the loan available to us. Not that we're borrowing any money right now, just getting the paperwork ready. So is there a second for the motion?
I'll make this,
Okay, please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tom Peck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us down to new business. First item is 11A RFQ 2023-001, Professional Real Estate Services. Mr. Daniels.
Yes, let me get the right page up for everybody else here, I'm sorry. There we go. As we discussed at the previous meeting, we had set out a request for qualifications for real estate professionals to act on our behalf. Obviously, we have the heritage lot that, we were looking at marketing, and so we received two proposals, one from Sotheby's International, it's over here in Harbor Bay Plaza, and another one from Daniel Real Estate and Marketing in Stewart. And the committee reviewed them and went ahead and approved one Sotheby's. I do have a video that was supplied as part of the application, but I think it spoke volumes for the quality of preparation that was made for the presentation. And in lieu of not making this a long meeting, I could play the video, but I'll have it if any of you have any doubts. And Yara is here tonight. Yara, would you like to step up? And so Sotheby's was as you saw in the documentation, was the winning qualifications by almost 100 points.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Yara Bashur, and I am a resident here. I'm also a realtor, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to review my application, and I'm here to answer any questions. I'm also the person who preserved the tree on my own property on the corner of Miramar and South Sewalls Point Road. I do have some, comments about the challenges of this lot, but I don't know if this is the time or place. But I would very much like to work with you, and I'm excited.
So I just need you all to ratify the accepting this as the winning RFQ. Yes.
I'll make a motion to ratify the RFQ and suggest that One Sotheby's International Realty be the appointed realtor in this case.
I'll second.
Any additional comments? Please call the roll.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes.
And Yara, if you're available on July 18th, when we have our next regular meeting,
Yes.
it'd be nice for you to come back and then give us your overview.
Okay,
plans.
I'll prepare a presentation for that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to new business 11B, Captech Engineering, South Sewalls Point Road Improvements Phase 2, task order. Mr. Daniels.
Yes, there's some confusion. Obviously, I could tell by some of the emails and so forth. Captech, back in 2000 and before that, this was a subsequent search that we did back in 2000, and Captech was the ultimate winner again of the RFQ that was out for continuing services as an engineer. So what happens with a continuing services agreement is you have some jurisdictions have, maybe 2 or 3 engineers on staff, and they utilize their services for different projects. Obviously, we're a small community, but we have a lot of projects that are in the pipeline and that we have planned for the next 5 years. So what happens is when we need an engineer to look at something or review something, we did have a permit request that came through the building department, and we asked, Joe to review it, Joe Capro from Captech. So, those are normal services that we try to allocate in the budget that we're going to spend X number of dollars a year on. And then we have our capital projects. And obviously, working hand in hand, getting the information that we need for the grants. Joe has worked with Chloe, again, to get her the information that she needs to be able to put that presentation together for those granting authorities. And then when we get the grants and we decide that we're going to go ahead with the project, we need somebody to design the project. And the way it's been handled in the past is our contractual service engineering firm does that contract based on the amounts of funding that they allocated in their agreement, or the expenses that would incur in the agreement. So that's kind of where we're at. It's not that there wasn't any type of a procedure or a procurement process. Again, I wasn't here in 2000, so I don't know exactly how that all came about, but I know Joe has had a long existing history with the town and representing the town in the past. So now we're at phase 2. We've already gone through this with phase 3 with allocating it, and again, that was prior to me being here, but Joe was putting the final touches on after I did join services with the town. And so we're now looking at phase 2, which we hope again to start in the next fiscal year and solve some of the problems that they have. So what Joe has put together is a proposal estimated on the different task orders that we have to do. And why this is important is our granting agency, in this case it's HMGP, which is a FEMA grant run through the State Department of Emergency Management, and they want to see activity. They've approved this about the same time as they approved the grant funding for phase 3, and they obviously have heard a lot about phase 3, but we weren't ready to go with phase 2. And so now we're gearing up and we're looking for more grant dollars. As I mentioned, in the month of July, hopefully we'll be applying for some more of those grant dollars to supplement what we need to get phase 2 done. So the first process, though, in that is to come up with an engineer that's going to be the design engineer of the project. And since we're, one thing I also want to throw out there is these systems, when they're completed, are supposed to be interlocking together. So, that's one thing to just consider when we're looking at, adding people. And, I think if the town wanted to add additional continuing service engineers, as a town engineer as well, they can do that. I mean, that's capable, of doing that. It just, in August, and that's another thing just to clarify on the agreement, it was set, and again, this was back in 2000 when the contract got approved, but it has a provision for automatic renewal in the agreement. So if we do nothing, the agreement automatically renews for another 3 years. And I think that's the point that Commissioner Campo brought up, is that, do we want to do something else? And so, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, and so that's kind of where we're at. I'm bringing this forward so we can move ahead with the Phase 2 project. Granted, it's $587,000, but, we hope that a lot of this, at least half of it, will be covered by our grant funding once we get that resolved.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes. Sorry, my microphone, I took up the little thing. Town manager, you kept saying 2,000, sorry.
Sorry.
For the contract. Maybe that was the initial one, but we bid for the continuing services, that was 2020?
Oh, 2020, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you kept saying 2,000, and I was like, that was a long time ago.
It's lapses.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, but, so that was 2020 that we redid that, okay, okay. I just wanted
But
to.
there were previous agreements to that, I believe, and maybe Glenn can help us, but, I don't have the history.
Yeah, my understanding is that, Captech's been the engineer for a few decades. I know we went through the FEMA process. The commission then decided, let's go out for proposals, and we did, you all did, and you selected Captech in 2020. And as Commissioner Campo said, it's a 3-year contract, renewing every 3 years, but you do have the option to terminate it at any time on 60 days' notice, but you have to give 60 days' notice.
And that's for the continuing service contract
Yeah,
and,
and that's for his main contract. Now, if you
Okay.
wind up doing a separate agreement, it would be the terms of that separate agreement. But this one is, as town engineer, it's 3 years and it renews every 3 years.
okay. Thank you. I understand the idea of rebidding. I think that bidding things out is an important part of government, and we did do that in 2020. But I believe that this project is it's in the middle of it, and this is, as we said before, a long, involved, detailed project. I think that Captech has done good work, and I think that changing it in the middle could actually have a real potential to lead to increased costs, because you don't know what you're going to get. It's an unknown, and that engineer would not have nearly the knowledge that our current engineering firm has. So.
Commissioner Campo.
Could I defer to Commissioner Fender since I spoke already?
Commissioner Fender.
Sure. So just a couple quick questions. I'm just interested in the price increases on the renewal contract. Can you just point out any increases in the service changes from the previous contract to a potentially renewed contract?
I don't think we know that, because it would be, we would have to go out and advertise.
No. I assume there's a contract here that we might renew. Is that
I think
incorrect?
he's talking about the hourly rates. Is that what you're
I
talking
see an
about?
asterisk by an hourly rate. Is that changing?
I don't believe it has, but Joe, do you want to address that?
So maybe I'll reword my question.
Yes, I'm sorry.
The question on the table is, will we rebid an engineering firm's contract, which we have in place, that was signed in 2020 and expires in a 3-year, becomes renewable in 3 years?
Okay, so
which
you're
is now,
talking
right?
about the continuing service agreement.
I think so.
Okay, because what's up, we're talking about Phase 2, so I just want to make sure that,
I'm talking about Captech Engineering contract for renewal with hourly rates. Am I wrong about that?
As the mayor stated, I commingled those, and perhaps I shouldn't have, because now it's confusing. Let's.
Is that a topic coming up that we haven't gotten to yet?
It's going to be under my commissioner comments. I think maybe that would be a better way of doing that, so that
fair
we
enough.
could clear the way, and I understand the mayor's concern about coagulating, and that was not my intention. You like that word?
Sure. Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yeah, I'm kind of agree with what Kaya was saying before. You're middle of building a house, and you're not going to put your general contractor up for bids at this. This is just too big of a project, too expensive, and I don't see any benefit. It's just right now we have tens of millions of dollars on the line, and if you were going to do something, you do something like this when you don't have tens of millions of dollars on the line. If it was my personal home, and my home was $10 million, and I'm building it right now, and my general contractor's got everything going, and he's already done one phase of my home, and it's working correctly, I don't think I want to make a change at this point, especially when my money's all out there. That would be very foolish. And phase one works beautifully, I will say that, and now would not be a good time to do it. Eventually these projects will be finished, you bring somebody in, you're going to have to show them from start to the end, and they may not be familiar. Joe's been here, I believe, since 1968, 78, whatever it is. It's been a long time. And
I think he was born in 1968.
it's been a while.
Not quite that old. He's wise and mature, but not that old. But
he's aware of everything that's going on, and I do have confidence in him with this project, and I will say that. And I don't know if the other commissions feel the same way or not, but I personally do, and I think he's done a great job with the project so far.
Okay, I've got a couple of quick questions on this, but I want to talk in general when we do the commission comments about the overall thing.
Sure.
Looking at the specific task order here, it's $587,000, and I was wondering if that's a problem based on the statutory not to exceed amount in CapTech's contract, and that goes back to the CCNA with a limit of 500,000. I think it's 500,000 and 4 million in construction. So I'm wondering if that 587 is beyond the statutory limit in Article 3, Compensation C, in your contract, Joe. Can you fill me in? Did I miss something there? Or is...
I'm going to rely on it, but tell you that's like you said, CC.
Okay. See, I wasn't sure, based on the wording of the CCNA statute versus the task 1A, 1B, and 2 through 5 here, come up to more than $587,000, and I think that's in excess of what the amount of compensation in Article 3 of your contract, Joe. And I don't know if it violates the 287-055 Florida statute.
Yeah, I'm looking at that as well, and...
I'm asking the question. I'm not saying it does. I'm just
Right,
not sure.
I mean, you're right, the contract does say, in accordance with that statute, that the professional service under this contract will be for projects that do not exceed $4 million in estimated construction costs or $500,000 in estimated professional service for a study activity. So is the 587 all considered a study activity?
And I'm not sure the answer to that. That's why I asked the question.
And I'm not either.
I mean, I don't have any particular issue with the breakdown of the services. I was curious, Joe, that we talk a lot about potential cash flow problems in the future, yet we never really lay out a cash flow. So how do we know if we're going to have a cash flow problem if we don't have a cash flow laid out? The other thing I was looking for, and maybe I missed it, I didn't see any schedule associated with the task order. I see something about when it's going to start, but I didn't see an overall schedule. And I think I kind of think that we really need to do a better job in scheduling some of these things. They seem to, and I know there's things that come up that will affect the schedule or impact the schedule in terms of delaying it or whatever. But I look at this and I really don't even have any idea how long it's going to take. So I'd really kind of like to see the schedule. I mean, the other thing and the last item, and I have to go back and pull it out, I have some papers here. That 587,000 number didn't match what was on the big sheet for Phase 2. So I'd like to go back and take a quick look at that and make sure that they match. So those are the comments I have on or the questions I have on the task order itself.
So, can I jump in now?
Jump in right now.
Okay, so I'm not against moving ahead with the 587. That's not, I may have confused it, and I didn't mean to. I wanted to just throw that out there for people that wanted to leave early. I just wanted, like, grab you and keep you, the surprise ending. I agree that we need to have a timetable and deliverables that are stated. I feel like the commission is basically, we really only have two responsibilities, the purse strings and the manager. And once you release the purse strings, it just goes out there. And I think things are taking too long. I'm sorry. I receive criticism from my clients, and I try to explain my staff is behind, and the industry is this and that, and they say, so what? We'll fire you. So I think that to have a better connection here to kind of fill in the gap here, we should ask the town engineer to give us more specificity as far as the deliverables, timetable, and the cash flow, because we're just basically authorizing the 587, not authorizing the disbursement of that, right?
That's correct, but
Right.
Once it's, this sort of opens the gate, I guess.
Yeah,
So-
right. So to me, that just adds accountability. That's what I'm looking for. We're all saying that we're fiscally responsible or conservative. So I think that means accountability. And I think that's telling the town engineer, I think that I'm excited that the commercial district is being done. That took a long time to get basically 10 ERCs. So under commissioner comments, I will chat about the continuing service agreement, but that's what I would like. I would like to maybe even suggest staff work with the town engineer to approve this, subject to some deliverables and timetables, so that we have a better handle on the cash flow and when these things are going to be done.
I agree with that, and if you would, Mr. Daniels, give Mr. Torsivia and make sure we have no problem with the statute.
Right, and I was going to ask if it does, if the 587 does exceed a $500,000 cap, because I noticed the cap fluctuates with the statute, and this 3 years ago, I don't know whether the statute has been increased, that we have the authority to negotiate with Joe to get that number down below 500,000, if that is a restriction.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
That's why they call it cap tech.
All right, so
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve.
before you do that,
I have one.
Commissioner Mayfield
Yeah,
has
sorry.
comments. I think.
Just a couple small things, and I agree with those modifications, those make sense. Page one, actually, the whole thing is dated July 2022. I think that's obviously just typos, because we're in 2023, but all the dates are 2022. And then page 108, Exhibit A, to your reference about timetables, the other commissioner and the mayor, it does say 1,000, completed within 1,095 calendar days from the approval of this task order.
Page 108, Exhibit A?
Yeah, 108. And I just had written down a note, how was that calculated? I guess that just took into account when they
Right.
think they're going to start, town
Sounds
manager?
like
when-
365 times 3, I don't know. I'm just guessing. It's going to get done
Yeah.
by the time the contract ends.
Yeah, there you
Isn't that
go.
what contractors
Well,
do?
I think we'd like to see
Yeah,
some intermediate milestones.
There you
in
go.
that.
Now we're talking.
yeah, no, I had to know how was this calculated? What does it mean? Okay, that's it.
Mr. Capper.
Okay, without getting into too many details, but you have to realize we are dealing with a ton of grants. And guess what? I can't predict, first of all, when the grant agency is going to sign a contract. So there's various phases in that. So, for example, the Phase 2 grant that I have already, we received that back in '21, I think it was. So I have been kind of trying to keep it alive here, okay, so that because I can't get enough direction on what lots to buy, okay, because we need lots to acquire them. So I think you're misunderstanding a few things. I'm just going to go to the commercial septic to sewer. I was on top of that project. We got money when we probably didn't deserve to get money on it. But second of all, what's most important is nobody could get those building owners over there to sign the agreements. That's what held us up, not me. That contract could have been done a lot quicker, but I can't spend the funds without the grant being in place, because then you don't get reimbursed for my fees. So I think we need to understand, it's not as easy as just putting a time frame on these when I'm dealing with grants. And I'm not dealing with one grant, I'm dealing with multiple grants. And you don't get reimbursed for my time until I wait to start this. That's why we're starting this now, is because we're ready to go forward. And if I had done it earlier, you wouldn't have gotten reimbursed for my fees. So I'm just telling you, this is not a very easy task. It is highly, you guys are relying heavily on grants, and you have to wait until they're ready. And quite frankly, we go in for a certain amount of grants. Sometimes we don't get the total amount we want. We get a certain portion of it. And all this stuff has to move around a lot. And so, I mean, I don't have a problem negotiating with you. I don't have a problem with your proposing. But what I have a problem with is I don't think you understand the grant process and how hard it is to determine when somebody's going to work on something. Because there's no way I can tell you when a landowner is going to sign an agreement that is relative to us getting a grant. And that's what we did. We basically had to make sure we did that work in a certain time frame. So don't get me wrong, I'd love to do things quicker for you folks, but guess what? If you can't get reimbursed for my money, you're going to be mad at me. So
I'm wondering if it's a case, Joe, of maybe just even identifying milestone events with some durations. That way we recognize, hey, you can do this part of the engineering, but we can't go any further. And that way, when we go back and review the performance, we have an idea of, any things we need to do better the next time, or things that the commission or the town manager needs to do better the next time. And I think you've got, you know what your milestone events are in terms of the engineering, the permitting, and that kind of thing. And we recognize that there's going to be some, fits and starts, because of the grants. We understand that. But I'm just reluctant to sign a task order for, $587,000 with no schedule and no cash flow. So, I recognize that it may be modified several times during the life of the task.
I just want you to know that this is, I'm not in control of a lot of this there. And again, if we weren't going after all these grants and you had the money in the bank to do this stuff, it'd be a totally different program. You would sign it, you'd tell me to go forward with this contract, I'd give you a time frame, I'd give you exact amounts and everything. How many times would we go back and forth on phase 3? And before we even got to the fact that we're rebidding it, the landowner pulled out on us. I mean, all these things are happening, and the money that's in this is not just to do engineering, okay? It's helping you with grants, it's getting subs, all these other subs coordinated. I mean, the fact of the matter is the grant time alone is phenomenal. And then just kind of looking at all this other stuff, it's not easy to get these permits. These permits, I have to get those too, which you can't do any of this work without it, but that's what you hire me for, okay? I'm not bitching about the work, I'm just telling you, to tell you sometimes, exact numbers, when every time I go talk about going for one property owner or another property owner, we're using parts of people's lots. We're not using the whole lot. It's like, I got to sell them on that issue, which means I got to do a rendering for them. These are things I don't even know yet, because I don't even know who I'm dealing with. So.
Mayor, can I add something?
Commissioner Mayfield.
I'm listening to all this, and I think that, Joe, you raised some very good points that are very valid. I think maybe some communication through the town manager to us would be helpful about status, as opposed to just the meetings. Because in our day-to-day life, we're doing our own things, and time seems to pass, and we're not dealing with all the struggles that you're dealing with. So we just kind of, it just seems so happen magically, and obviously it's not. So that if the engineer could update the town manager, and the town manager could be like, listen, we're just kind of reminding us so that we're aware. I think that's a great suggestion. And also in terms of numbers, in accounting and other places, you have that equal sign that's wavy, and that means an estimate. So you could always if we're looking for numbers, he could give a best estimate with the caveat that this is really, really, really loose. And that way maybe, we feel like we're getting what we need, and he's covering his business by saying, this is just a suggestion to kind of ease this. Because I hear that, and I don't hear that regularly, and that is a reminder of all the things we are trying to accomplish, because to go back to the very beginning of this meeting, we don't have the money to do these projects. So you look at other municipalities and counties, they have capital projects that are not 3 times their budget. Our project is just so ginormous compared to what we do. So that's my suggestion.
Commissioner Fender.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. My previous conversation got cut short a little bit, but I've been at this a while now, so I understand the process, and what we're saying is very valid, and also what Joe is saying is absolutely crystal clear to me, because the process we go through in order to do these projects that are way outside of our ad valorem capability are dependent on a lot of things that nobody wants to be faster than me in the technology field, but I know how long it takes to do these projects because we can't do them without funding. And so Joe's done a bang-up job working with Chloe and other agencies to get us the funding to do, as you mentioned, reimburse his salary, but also to get us to be able to pay for the entire projects in general. That takes time. Secondarily, though, right now what we have on our table in front of us, Joe, is what looks to me like a contract that says, hey, let's approve $587,000. It would help us if the stipulations of this contract identified those sort of milestones that are what are holding you down a little bit, right? That say, hey, we understand that there's going to be $87,000 worth of work. It is going to be dependent and contingent on X, Y, Z. That way we don't feel like we're opening the gate to sign a contract to allow you just to take $587,000 over the next fiscal year without the milestones that we're talking about. So probably just this particular contract needs a little more detail, which you obviously have. You understand the process crystal clear, and I have ultimate faith in what you do because I've been watching it for many, 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 many years. I just think we have a fiscal responsibility that we're getting flooded with. There's a little bit higher contingency in the audience today, and we get a few emails in the background because they don't fully understand the process, and they feel like there's this debt concept they don't really understand as well. So there's a healthy distrust of leadership, which I fully advocate. So I just think this is a communication issue, right? So we have to kind of be clear as to why, what it is around this particular contract that we're about to ratify. And I think it's easily obtainable. I don't know if it's obtainable in this meeting, but I think just we can put some parameters around this to make it. And I believe the $587,000 is probably highly legitimate. I just can't see it sitting here, right?
Okay, what's the
take
what's the
it down?
pleasure of the commission? Commissioner Campo?
So I'll make a motion that we approve staff's recommendation and add that we're going to ask Glenn to check into the $500,000 statutory limitation, and we're going to ask the town engineer to come back with milestone events with timetable ranges, and we have an idea as far as the cash flow connected to those timetable ranges. I don't think we are asking for exact dates, but some ranges, and I think that's a great term, milestone events. So that would be my motion.
I think that's very reasonable, and I'll second it.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. I think that's where we're headed. Can we, any additional comments?
Maybe, sorry.
Go ahead. I was
Oh,
going
sorry, I
to
didn't
ask for
do my-
concerns from Joe on that
That's
motion
a-
before we vote on it.
That's a good idea.
Authorization for negotiation.
Have we made it clear, Joe, or is it just the usual jumbled mess we throw at?
No, I'm fine with what you're asking. That's fine. I just want to let you know it's not going to be as clear as you're going to have these plans. You know, we did a schedule, me and Bob, we talk every Friday for about an hour or two. And we did a schedule on getting phase 3 done and getting it on the bid by the end of the year. And then we did, you know, it may be aggressive, but we looked at one to get phase 2 done in April, to be starting construction in April. That's a real aggressive schedule, okay? That's what I'm committed to do, but it's going to take a lot of work. I still need to figure out what lots we're going to be working with and what parts of lots, you know, so that's what's going to be in your milestones, okay, at this point. But you know, it's going to depend on us, you know, finding willing sellers and people that'll give up easements and things like that. So I just want you to know. I'll give you what you want. That's no problem.
Thanks, Joe. Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, I was going to say, with what Joe just said, that I think we all want it done quickly, but I also appreciate realism in these things. I would rather kind of not oversell and underdeliver, you know. So just, I appreciate knowing ahead of time. And then I wanted to comment, you said something about, I approve the motion, I think it sounds great, but you said something about the cash flows. I feel like that needs a little, cash flows are kind of hard to predict necessarily that far into the future, so that's a little vague. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be included, but maybe they'll figure it out, but that's, that's, I don't even, that would be hard to predict that far out, exactly what the cash flows are going to be. But that's fine. I still approve the motion because that.
Yeah, one thing I've learned watching this project go on, whether it's phase 1, now phase 3, everything's an obstacle course because you think something's going to go in one direction, then there's somebody throws a monkey wrench in there, and you know, one time even with phase 1, the Indian reservation held us up where over by the retention pond, I think it was, and James had to make a phone call to one of the senators to get our money released. They stopped our work. And that wound up costing us having to have Cheatham stop the project. That cost us money. Then we had to figure other ways to make up for the money. It was just, you just can't predict these things. We're supposed to have the money on a certain time, and the money's not there. And what happens when that money's not there? Another money's being halted. It's a chain effect. And one thing happens, and it just screws everything up. And so many times we see things, we have a schedule, but there are things that just aren't in prediction, that you just don't know are going to happen. And I can't blame our town engineer for that. It's just, once again, it goes back to grants. We're depending on other people's monies. And that's just the life we live right now. And it's that, or we raise our taxes like crazy, and then we could just hand them a check. But that's not the way we do things here. Grant money is a lot easier, and it's not going to cost the taxpayer as much. We're very fortunate to get the grants we have. It's not easy getting these grants. Sometimes you got to coordinate them because grants are like a carton of milk. They have expiration dates. At a certain time it goes bad, and you got to try and get the other grants in to coordinate things. And if that one carton of milk expires, meaning that grant's gone, now we got to go back to the drawing board and get more grants from somewhere else, and it never stops. And I've seen this merry-go-round for the past 5 years, or 6 years, whatever it is now. It never stops. And every time you think you have something under control, it's not. And then you get the next surprise because you hit something else and you find out something's going to cost us a little more because somebody's property has something on it that you got to make alterations to go around, and you find out that alteration is going to cost you $8,000. And then something else happens, and it just too many unpredictable things. You don't know what you're getting into when you start a project. But once you start it, you can't just halt it. And the fact is, this road floods like crazy. There are homes, when you do see these flood waters, that have the floods up to their front doors, into their homes, their garages, and you can't drive through it. It's dangerous. Emergency vehicles, somebody has a heart attack on this road. Even with the SUVs we have, we're not getting in that easy. This project has to get done. It's a safety issue too. And it's better for us, instead of having to always go up River Road, and even there, some of these side roads flooded. We've experienced that during the last hurricane, how bad it could be. And once these roads are raised, I could honestly say, since they've raised over from Henry Sewalls on up through High Point, the road has not flooded. It used to flood all the time. And I know we had a guy in here maybe about 2 months ago yelling at us, when are you going to finish our road over here going further north on Sewalls Point, South Sewalls Point Road? And it's just, people are anxious to get this done so that we could all live normal lives. It's nice to drive home on one road. It's raising at 3 feet, and it's going to make a big difference. I was more skeptic than anybody, and when this project started, I was against the project on phase 1. And it's really helped us tremendously. And I feel that everybody should get to drive on a dry road and not wake up in a floodwater in the morning. And I've actually been called out to the people. I get phone calls, and they'll tell me, come on by Riverview or come on over on South Sewalls. It's really bad. You got to see this. I'll come over and I look. And there's nothing worse than water up to your front door until you experience it. Bless you.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I believe there is, and I would like to make one more torturous comment. What I'm thinking about here, and the reason I brought up the cash flow thing is that when we were doing the earlier phases, we ran into cash flow problems and we had to stop work, and then we had to demobilize and remobilize, and it cost us $150,000, $175,000, whatever it was. I'm just trying to get enough information on future cash flows so we don't run into that problem again, because if we can see it on the cash flow, hey, we're going to be short in, October of '25, what are we going to do? Well, we may have the ability to, use the revolving loan fund, but at the same time, I'd like to know about it, and I don't know how we can figure it out unless we have a cash flow. So maybe that's what we should be thinking about, and when we start doing the detailed construction on phase 3, then we should be able to get a very good cash flow for that portion of the project and see where that puts us. That's all. I'm just worried about coming up short and having to waste money on mobilization, remobilization, that's all.
I agree, I have that same concern.
Okay. We do have a motion. Was there a second? Did we get a second on the last motion?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Okay, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompak?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to commission and staff closing comments. Mr. Daniels?
I have a few of them here. First off, the 4th of July, Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, a week from today, is we're closed in Town Hall. But we do have our 4th of July picnic and festivities that the chief has been working hard on. And Chief, what's the start time for the festivities?
The flight parade starts at 8:45 sharp, followed by the judging for the most patriotic person, child, dogs, strollers. Yeah. Yeah, they can. They can. We do have a swimming pool and there'll be water provided, but do consider the heat. It's been pretty warm out there, so. Yeah, we don't. So usually it wraps up by noon.
Okay.
So wear a bathing suit and there'll be water slides. Put some new field games this year.
Thanks for all your work, Chief.
I'm a strong believer that these activities, when we can have them, really help strengthen our community, because it really doesn't matter what you agree upon or disagree upon. It's just having a good day to celebrate. And so I look forward to having everybody out there. The next thing that just to let you know and that we have going in the works, and you'll see more of it at our next meeting on July 18th. That is, for those of you who aren't aware, we did have one meeting date for July, and that's going to be July 18th at 6 o'clock here. So just in case you didn't catch that, I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of it. The One thing that we'll have is we've been researching, with the chief's help, the Purple Heart, becoming a Purple Heart town. Obviously, we work a lot with our veterans that are here in the community, and so we'll have some more information at the meeting on July 18th and a resolution, but I'll have that together for you. We also have been working on the modifications to the tree ordinance, and those need to be reviewed by the local planning agency, which is this commission. It sits as a local planning agency, and we're planning that meeting for 5 p.m. on July 5th. I'm sorry, 5 p.m. on July 18th. 5 p.m. on July 18th. So it's an hour before the regular meeting in July. And then we'll have that ordinance ready to go as part of the agenda packet at the July 18th meeting of the commission. Also, the League of Cities Conference, I mentioned that before. I haven't heard anything, and not to put you all on the spot, but I do want to make sure that if a member of the commission is planning on attending, we can make sure you get set up with the hotel. There is also a form for a delegate that has to vote. So have any of you looked at your dates? It's August 10th through 12th, and it's in Orlando. No takers?
I have to go back and check. I think I may be.
Washing your hair that night? You might be washing your hair that night?
No, actually, I'm going to a wedding in California that week, I think.
Big trip. Yes. Okay, well, I will see what we can do to represent the town. So.
Is it something that you're strongly urging one of us to step forward? Because if that's the case, yes?
Yes.
Oh.
I think it's, the league does a lot of work in the background and obviously legislatively, and I know we have some concerns legislatively. And yes, managers have gone representing towns before, but I think it means a lot more when there's an elected official, because the League of Cities is really the cities, and who represents the cities the best is our commission. So I know it's time away from work for some of you, and there are meetings that you have to attend, and it's 3 days that you have to give up. I think it's usually tailored around Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm not sure what those dates are on the calendar, but if you're interested, I can.
Well, I'm not interested, but if you're urging one of us to go, I will take another look at it, okay?
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sure.
I just think it's kind of important, particularly, we have the Form 6, situations and everything else. I think we really need to have some representative there. I also want to introduce Zoe Berry. Zoe is our intern here for the summer. She's in her senior year, and she is also being able to work as she learns. So she's been very helpful and useful, and you'll be seeing a video kind of going over our commercial septic to sewer program, but also what you can look at seeing as we get into our South Sewalls Point Road septic to sewer. And it's a short 7-minute video that she helped edit, and with Tom's help, we're getting it on the YouTube channel, and there'll be a link that'll be sent out. So anyhow, so just to let you know, but Zoe's been very helpful, and she's only been here 2 weeks now. So but she's learning a lot, which is good. She could be taking over my job when I retire in 10 years. So and the comments that came up about the floor elevation from HB, I have already started that in motion because I knew that was a problem, and getting with Bonnie and and Jack, and you'll be seeing that in the future as some type of a clarification amendment to our land development code and our building heights. So without having anything factual to give you, but that is something that I noticed that is a big problem that we have to deal with. And I think that's it for my notes. I'm sorry it took so long.
No problem. Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, I just wanted to tell my fellow commissioners in reference to our, I'm on the League of Cities board, And you kind of share some issues that might, things that are going on in your town if you want to. And I mentioned the struggle we had with bids. So I just want to let you know that we're not alone, that the other municipalities have been experiencing the same problem. So it's not just like we're doing it wrong or something. So I just had meant to say that earlier and I forgot.
Okay, I think that'll bring us, well, how about Commissioner Fender first?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I didn't get the opportunity to address Nick, who spoke at the dais today, and he walked out of the meeting shortly after he spoke. I was going to go up to him and say that I'd be happy to talk to him after the meeting, but I get the sense just from some of the emails I've gotten and some of the sense about the understandings of the sausage making of this very difficult project that there's a little bit of misinformation floating around, or it certainly could take pieces of what we're doing and be construed the wrong way. And we have had requests in the past for strong communication plan and outreach to the community. I think, I guess I'll put my additional plea to that, because I would hate for the continued spiral of misinformation on what we're trying to accomplish here derail almost critical projects that are required for the health and longevity of the town. So if anybody knows Nick, my door is open. I hope I can find a way to reach him, and I'm happy to talk to all the concerns he raised, and there you go. Sure. And likewise, anybody in the dais, if you have concerns about what you've heard here today, I'm always open to talk about them. I know some of you do, and we may not always agree, but I will certainly listen to your point of view and where you're coming from. So.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Campo.
Yeah, so I would like to discuss what I brought up earlier, and that is the services of the town engineer. I am being alerted to an opportunity that we only have every 3 years. So I'm going to ask Glenn some questions before he puts his stuff away, and that's Article 10 of his contract regarding successors and assigns, page 8. I don't know if anyone's looking at the popular series Succession on HBO. It's a big popular series about 4 kids trying to take over their dad's business, and what ends up happening. Spoiler alert, I won't tell you.
I hope we're not as idiotic as the kids are. I'll tell you that. Spoiler alert.
So I think it would be smart, as we've done in other areas, such as debris removal, to have a bench of folks that can help us in this area. Now, it may or may not involve the projects that we're working on now. It might be River Road, but we have no plan B. Now, in accounting, they call it audits and controls, and in technology, they call it redundancy, and engineering might call it checks and balances. We don't have any. We don't have a succession plan. So if for some reason, and I don't know, maybe it's my age, but people are starting to knock on my door and say, hey, would you like to sell your business? What would happen if Joe Capra got the gazillions of dollars that he deserves for all of his hard work? Where would that put the town? It sounds like he owes us a responsibility, but he might not assign the contract, but then where would we be? So is there a way that we can have backup engineers for the continuing service contract that may or may not involve the projects that we're looking at, but may involve another project, so that we could have, a backbench, a succession plan. And I want to ask Glenn, what would be the procedure for us, according to the contract, to, without alienating Joe, people look for their ask me for their portfolios and their insurance policies on a regular basis, and I say, here. And I make my case, and I keep my clients. So I think that's just that's what I'm looking for, is the ability to tell the public that this was once in a 3-year opportunity. And so I'm asking Glenn about Article 10 succession, and what would be the procedure that we would do, and then also the town manager. Can we have backup town engineer or municipal engineers that we can have go through the RFQ process, which would not necessarily interrupt this big project, but would give us an opportunity to have some others lined up so that if something happened, he wins the lottery or sells his practice, that we've got someone else. Because, I'm very happy for the service that he's done. We're stewards, and we've got a lot of money here, we should do is take out a big key man life insurance policy on him. I mean, we've got a lot of things in one place, and that's all in his mind. So tell me about the process for RFQ. Can we have a backup engineering firm, and what the town can do for the succession planning according to Article 10?
A lot of things to unpack there. So maybe I'll start at the beginning. 3 years ago, you all went out for proposals to have another engineer or to consider, who would be your town engineer work on these projects. I don't remember how many bids there were. I know you went through a process. I believe you interviewed folks, and you ended up selecting Captech. As Commissioner Ocampo said, it's a 3-year contract that renews automatically for 3 years. However, you have an out clause. Both sides have an out clause at any time on 60 days notice. So either one of you can terminate the contract, and that kind of answers a little bit the succession planning in that, Joe would have to give us 60 days notice, which isn't really that much time to get an RFP on the streets. And we could give him 60 days notice at any point to say we want to terminate your services under this particular contract. You could always go back out for an RFP, the question, or RFQ, or whatever style we're calling it. I guess the real question is, what's the scope? Are you putting out one that says we're looking for a town engineer? Are you looking for someone for a specific project? Are you looking for someone to be on the bench, as you called it? So that's, I think, a conversation to talk about. I would assume that depending on how you phrase it, that's going to depend. That'll dictate how much interest you get, right? I might be interested in being the town engineer. I might not be interested in being on the bench. I might be interested in being on the bench and not the town engineer. So, who's the audience that you're looking for would be a conversation if you decide you wanted to go through that process. And hopefully Joe or anyone would give the town plenty of notice to go through a process. But you're right, unforeseen events happen to all of us. And,
What's the process we use for the debris removal, where we had 3 or 4, 2 out of state, 2 local, and they're all gone through the RFQ, they've all got bonds? What's that called when you stack them up?
the same thing. You stacking them up is a good way of saying it. You had a number of folks. I think we wound up contracting either 2 or 3 of them. I don't think we contracted with all 4, but we had contracts with backups. Under FEMA regulations, you need to go through a process to procure those kind of services. So it's really a question of, do you want the backup, and how do you phrase that?
Right. So a project like South River Road and Mandalay, which came out and a lot of assorted things, and which might not be related to what we're doing on South Sewalls Point Road, might be an example of a project of having stacked up, or some other scope of service. What I'd like to do, just to kind of push it off, traditionally, when a commissioner asks for something to be put on the agenda, it normally is given the courtesy of that. Would anyone have, well, here I go. Would anyone have an objection to us putting it on the agenda for July, just for now, just so that the public understood that we're taking a close look at the contract renewal, which is really our only next opportunity? Would anyone have that? And to ask the attorney to give us examples of how we might have a backup in case there was another project that happened, or succession planning. I mean, we're always going to have, Dave, we're always going to have work. We're always going to have capital improvement projects. We're always going to have, that baton that needs to be passed. I'm not looking to make any changes. I'm looking for us to be prepared. I'm looking for relieving of the heat, because there's heat out there. And I have my job to do, just like you have your job to do and all of your challenges. And when I see, some of the stuff that's coming down, I think that we need to do you know. So would anyone have an objection to putting on the agenda an item regarding the items that I've just brought up for Glenn to come back and report to us? Would anyone have that objection?
I don't have an objection. I think it's probably a good idea.
Okay.
I think,
When is-
you know, I think some of the stuff is relatively simple and straightforward. There's nothing that prevents you, under the statute, from having 10 engineers if you want them, okay? So it's not, if we feel like we want to have a backup, or if we feel that, you know, there's maybe some separate projects that a different engineer could work on, it's not a problem. All we have to do is, you know, request qualifications and rates and make a decision. So we can add another engineer without any problem. So, but I understand what you're saying in general about having that discussion. I don't have a problem with doing that.
Okay, then we can stop there.
I have a quick question. What is the date? When did we do that 3-year contract?
Well, the contract is dated.
I know, but what date?
Right, it's August 20th
August,
of
thank you.
2020, so it automatically renews on August 20th of 2023,
Well, you know,
and it's 60 days, and I don't think, I'm not hearing the conversation to terminate this agreement. I'm hearing a conversation.
No, not at all.
Right, the
Not at all.
conversation I'm hearing is, how do we position ourselves to have a backup?
I was just curious.
And that was really what I wanted to ask, because, you know, this doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to, you know, terminate the agreement and just go out to bids. It means that we're going to add somebody to the stable, I guess.
And honestly, you may not. You may, for example, go out for proposals for River Road, and Captech may win that competition.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't know who's going to bid, and you don't know what the background is, and all the other factors that you have. So, but you certainly can go out and see what's in the water.
Commissioner Fender.
I was just going to say, clearly, the contract is up for renewal on August 20th, so we have to do our due diligence and look at that renewal and ratify the fact that we may or may not want to move it forward. I would be super shocked if, you know, I mean, knowing what I know about the great work that Joe has done over the years and on this particular project, that any change would be made, but having a backup is also a great thing. And more importantly, I think, as some of the emails have recognized, that we, you know, we do need to be looking at the quality of service we're getting and making sure that we're staying on top of it. So that seems like rational.
Good. I think people want to hear that they're being heard and that we're trying to come up with something, and I think that's a good compromise, and I appreciate everyone's input on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other comments from the commissioners?
That's it.
I hear a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Yay.